Okay, Grandma. What parsha is it again?
Parshat Tisa.
Tisa. Very good. The Tisa talks about how the Jewish people made the greatest mistake in history, mistake of the golden calf. It was just 40 days after we got the Torah, and we had such clarity, things were so obvious. And yet, 40 days later, when Moshe Rabbeinu and Moses didn't return down the mountain, we were so confused, and we worshipped this golden calf. No matter how many times you learn the story, you're always going to have a greater question than the answer. How do we do it? How do we do it? No matter how you explain the story, you're always going to be wondering what exactly was missing here. How do we not realize this was not a good idea? So, can you hear me? You can hear me. Not sure you can hear me. I think my audio is connected. I'm not sure about yours. So an even more astonishing thing is this: when the Torah says that Moshe Rabbeinu, went to ask God to ask him for forgiveness, the Torah says Moses said to God, "Forgive the Jewish people because they are a stiff-necked nation. They're a nation with a stiff neck. Therefore, you should forgive them." Now, the obvious, because we're a stiff-necked nation, that's what God forgive us. That's the reason why He shouldn't forgive us. God already said 3 times in the Torah that the reason why He was upset is because we're stiff-necked. Because the idea of being stiff-necked means that you turn your back away from the person criticizing you. You're not paying attention to him. You don't care what he says. You're stiff-necked. You do your thing. So people are trying to talk to you, and you're just focusing on what you're doing, and you couldn't care less. Another interpretation of being stiff-necked is that you don't see things in different angles. You have tunnel vision. It's focusing on one aspect, and you're not seeing the whole picture. You're stiff-necked. You're stuck in one particular way of looking at things. So why is it that Moshe Rabbeinu, he says to Hashem, "Forgive us," because we're stiff-necked? That's the reason to forgive us. That's the reason to incriminate us, not a reason to forgive us. So Rashi says that the word "because," forgive us because we're stiff-necked. Actually, the word "ki" doesn't just mean because. It means if we're stiff-necked. If we're stiff-necked, still forgive us. The Even Ezra says the word "ki" means although. It's not because, it's although. It's the opposite. Although we're stiff-necked, still forgive us. But the simple translation of the Torah needs to be understood. We're saying Moshe says to Hashem, "Forgive the Jewish people because they're stiff-necked." Being stiff-necked doesn't seem to be a virtue. This seems to be what got us into this mess. So why would Moses mention our being stiff-necked as a reason to forgive us? That's like the biggest problem here. So what Moses is teaching us is that the child that you have the biggest problems with is the child that'll give you the most nafas, is the one that'll give you the greatest pleasure. The biggest problem that you have that God created in you is actually the source of your reaching the farthest in life. What will help you go the farthest in life is your ability to is the thing that brings you down. That's the thing that will help you go the farthest. Barely, you could hear me, right? So, to understand this, let's go back to the story of Joshua, story of Yeshua. Torah says that after the Jewish people conquered the city of Jericho, of Jericho, Joshua made a decree that no one should rebuild the walls of Jericho. Okay, decree is decree. Everyone kept the decree. There was one man who ignored the decree, although there was an ominous promise of Joshua that if you build these walls, God forbid your children will die. This man didn't care. This man went and he rebuilt the walls of Jericho. And as the Torah predicted, as Joshua predicted, Joshua promised, um, this this man buried one child and a second child and a third child. And by the time he finished building the walls of Jericho, he lost all of his children. That's stiff neck. This same man, this week we add additional Haftorah, and in the Haftorah, we don't always get a chance to read this particular Haftorah because there are 4 extra Torah portions read between Passover and Purim, Purim. So we don't usually read the regular Haftarah. The regular Haftarah is usually not the one that's read. So we read about how the king Achav was a worshiper of the idol called Baal. Together with him, were many Jews that also worshipped this idol. And the king called over the prophet Elijah, and he's like, "You guys think that your Torah is real? It says in the Torah that if the Jewish people build idols, Hashem says, I'll take back the rain, and they'll suffer. I'm not suffering." And make a long story short, Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal to a I don't know what the word is, the day to prove who's right, to a debate. And the prophets of Baal came to this mountain called Mount Carmel, and 450 of them, together with thousands of spectators. And the challenge was, Elijah challenged them, said, who could bring down a fire from heaven? And they're like, sure, we can bring down a fire. Our God, and fire from heaven is easy for him. And Elijah, he said, okay, you guys go first. And so they begin their rituals and their prayers, and their God is not bringing down the fire. And they're screaming louder and louder at their God, and nothing's happening. Now, they weren't so foolish to think that their idol was real and that he was going to send the fire from heaven. But they hired this guy to light the fire in their altar, and that's why the Torah describing the altar, it says the altar that he built. Why is it the altar that he built? Because there was one man that built the altar. And Elijah the prophet is scorning them. So maybe you God is sleeping, maybe you guys just scream a little louder. So who was this one man? The Torah says there was the altar that he built. Who was the guy? They had someone planted there, and he was meant to hide in the altar, and he was going to light the fire at the appropriate time. So they had to hire somebody who was a stiff-necked person, who would betray the Jewish people and pretend that this fire came from heaven while he lit the fire. So the same guy that built the walls of Jericho, the same guy who lost all of his children, he is back again. Is this man Chiel from Beisa Eli, was the man who built the walls of Jericho, lost all of his children. He is back again building the altar for the prophets of Baal. He didn't learn his lesson at all. In fact, he is going to be the one to protect the prophets and prove the authenticity of their false God. And what happened is that a snake bit him, and therefore he died and was unable to light the fire. So that's the meaning of being stiff-necked. That you're just stuck in a certain path, erroneous path, and nothing can sway. And here, when Moses is asking God to forgive us the sin of the golden calf, what does he say? Why should he forgive us? Because we're stiff-necked. How is that a reason to forgive us? That's a reason why God should forgive us. First of all, he's mentioning our weakness. Even according to Rashi and Ibn Ezra, the Ibn Ezra says God saying, Moshe saying to God, even though we're stiff-necked, well, why mention it? Why focus on our fault at all? Especially according to simple translation, the verse forgive us because we're stiff-necked. There's a very powerful teaching of the Medrash in Shmos Rabbah, chapter 42, that gives us the answer. There's being stiff-necked in a negative sense. It's being stiff-necked in a positive sense. The same fault that we had that made us do the sin of the golden calf, being stiff-necked in the negative sense, is also the great power we have to be faithful to Hashem and not let go ever. It's true Jews are stubborn. That's our most important characteristic. As the Talmud says, who is the most insolent, the most chutzpahdik nation? The Jewish people. Is it a negative thing? Well, not really. Look at history. Either be Jewish or be killed. What do we choose all the time? The Jew has this eternity in him. He will never let go of Hashem. Does anyone remember the Romans and the Greeks? No. The Jews are here, and they're not letting go. There was a guard in yeshiva in Moscow by Zusha Gorelik. Heard the story when he was studying there about the guard of the yeshiva. The guard of the yeshiva said, before I worked in the yeshiva, I worked in the circus. Yes, you want to tell the boys it's not much different, it's not very different. And he said, when we would in the circus, we had this show where we had these elephants playing a game, and we had a bear who was meant to be the referee of the game. And what the bear did is, at the right moment, the bear would blow the whistle. That was like the highlight of the show. So what we would do is, we would go out in the forest and try to find the best bears. But who are the best bears? The best bears are not the ones that are similar to the cartoons. So that's the sweet teddy bearish kind of bears. The best bears for this job were bears that couldn't get along with the siblings. There's bears in the forest. Their mother isn't there, and the siblings aren't getting along. They have to fend for themselves. The ones who would cause the most problems for their siblings, the ones who were the hardest, the most meanest, the most annoying, those are the ones we took, because those are the ones who had this tendency not to give up, and they would just keep on going. Other bears, we would try to train them, and they would give up. But these bears, those are the ones who were the hardest to get along with. The ones who were the hardest to get along with were the ones who never gave up. The police force in Tel Aviv had a really hard time with this guy named Mati Ashkenazi. Mati Ashkenazi was a thief, and he worked on the beaches, and he was successful in ruining the experience for everyone, because he would steal everything. He was the best thief in the beach. He was the one that everyone knew to watch out for. But the police force arrested him, released him, arrested him, released him, and until it was June in 1997, and Mati Ashkenazi managed to take a bag, and he sees a wire coming out of the bag. He realized this bag isn't a simple thing. What happened was, there were terrorists that planted this explosive on the beach, and they wanted, the beginning of the summer vacation, thousands of people were on the beach, they wanted to kill as many as they could. So he, although he was a thief, he stole it, and he knew it. He brought this to the police station, and he managed to disarm the bomb. And they not only disarmed the bomb, they decided to completely forgive all of the open files, all the open cases against him, because of this act of heroism. He could have, said like, "Oh, I better not bring this back to the police force, because they're gonna say, oh, you're a thief." So they let him off, and he trying to find, his place in life. This is a major change. This is a major, moment for him. He's now, instead of being the beach thief, he's now the beach hero. Unbelievable what happened. What happened to Remmel? What happened is this Mati Ashkenazi offered his services to the police force to find the thieves. He wanted to do something with what he knew how to do best, and what he knew how to do best, steal. And therefore he knew how to catch the pickpockets and the thieves on the beach. And the police hired him to protect the beaches. He was the one who taught everybody all the tricks. And so he used his mistake to his detriment to protect the Jewish people. That's the being stiff-necked. Stiff-necked is our downfall. That's also the greatest virtue that we have. There was this 42-year-old went to the Jewish court in Tel Aviv to submit his request to be recognized as a Jew and therefore as an Israeli citizen. And there were two people that came to the Jewish court to testify. The presiding judge, the leading presiding judge, was a rabbi of Tel Aviv, whose name is Rabbi Yisrael Lau. I live really well. Rabbi Yisrael Lau said there were two witnesses that came. One guy said, I was by the circumcision of this man. I was there in Moscow. This guy was circumcised. And the second guy was a Chabad Chassid, an elderly man. He said, tell me the following story. So I didn't know this guy, but I know his mother. His mother worked in a hospital in Moscow. She wasn't religious, but she had this unusual custom. She was a chain smoker. Every day she would smoke 2 packs of cigarettes. And she would take one cigarette from these 2 packs and she would put it under her bed in a box, in a safety box. So that's what she would do every single night. The night before Purim, she would take the 365 cigarettes in the whole year that accumulated, and she would give them to me to sell them in the black market to buy matzah for her for Passover. I would buy flour, and I would make it in secret. In Russia, it was completely illegal in those days to make matzah for Passover. So I would make matzah for Passover for a whole year. I'm sorry, for her, with a cigarette that she collected a whole year. So this man tells the court, if this was his mother, you can imagine this guy's Jewish. Rabbi Lau was so touched. He said, I want to speak to his mother. And he calls Russia and he tells her, I celebrate the night of the Seder once a year. You celebrate 665 days a year, you're celebrating the Passover Seder. That's the idea of the stiff-necked nation. Stiff-necked, we don't let go. She's in Russia, she's not religious, but she has to have matzah for Passover. And every day she puts away a cigarette. She has to have matzah for Passover. So now we can also understand something unique about the holiday that's coming up, the holiday of Purim. This is the only holiday of the year, Torah says, to go a little bit out of yourself completely and to celebrate beyond logic and reason. It says in the Torah, so it's supposed to celebrate in Purim. You can't tell the difference between blessing, Mordechai versus Haman. Why in Purim? Why not Hanukkah? Why not Passover? Purim is just one day holiday or rabbinic holiday. It's not as holy, it seems, as a biblical holiday, like Pesach and Sukkot, times of our joy. The answer is that Purim is a day when we see the ultimate expression of Jewish stubbornness. We never saw the eternity of the soul in history like in the days of Purim. The Jewish people never dealt with the kind of freedom they had in time of Purim. The party that Achashverosh made before the decree against Jewish people characterizes the kind of environment Jewish people were in before the decree. It says, Hashtia kadas ein eines. You could drink as much as you want. There was as much wine as you want, any kind of wine that you want. There's no rules. There were no rules. That party was emblematic of the context and where the story of the Purim takes place. You are the rule. There are no rules governing you. You're the rule. Do you want to eat? Do you want to not eat? Do you want to stand? Do you want to sit? Do you want to read? As it says in the story of the Megillah, that King Achashverosh decides, oh, I want to bring my wife and parade her around everyone so you should see that she is the most beautiful. There's no rules. But in these days where there are no rules, we see the full light, the full glory of the Jewish people. It's the most beautiful time in the Jewish people ever in history. At this time, when there are no rules and everyone's, it seems to be their own man, we see the Jewish people listening to Queen Esther, all the Jewish people. She says, everyone should fast and pray for my sake and went to visit the king and ask the king to annul the decree. Who shows up? Every single Jew. Not one Jew is absent. You'd think like the Jews are living there for 70 years, have been exiled for 70 years. When Mordechai and Esther told them in Pele, you should go fast and pray to God, they should have answered, what do we have to do with you? We're Persians, we're not Jews. So when Esther said it though, she said, gather all the Jews, every Jew shows up. And so this was the moment of truth. When a Jew has to choose between Mordechai and Haman, this stiff-necked nature of a Jew chooses Mordechai. And that's the reason why we cannot remain complacent and important. We can't just like celebrate a little bit to come completely out of ourselves. As Purim expresses the power of a Jew, no matter what circumstances he's in, no matter what kind of thing is going on in his life, I'm not letting go of Hashem. That's the idea of the drinking and celebrating. The idea is that not just our mind chooses Mordechai when it makes sense, when it's comfortable. We choose Mordechai, we choose Torah, we choose mitzvahs, we choose goodness, we choose. But even it's beyond logical reason. Our choice of Torah and mitzvahs is not because of the environment, it's not because of our upbringing, it's not nature, it's not nurture. It's that this essence of the soul is bound with the essence of Hashem. And we express this essence in the celebration of Purim, where we drink, we celebrate beyond logical reason. We choose Mordechai. That's the meaning of the Talmud's statement. Drink until you cannot distinguish between blessed is Mordechai, curses Haman. It doesn't mean you should think that the villain is the hero and the hero is the villain. It means that not only should your mind say, not only should your heart say that blessed is Mordechai, but even beyond logical reason. What you don't know, you should drink till you don't know. What should you not know? Meaning, what should be by you a conviction beyond logical reason that blessed is Mordechai. It should be not just something you know, but something that's beyond your knowledge, something that you are attached to in a way that's beyond what makes sense. This is what the Jewish people display in the story of Purim. This is what Hashem grants us every year on the anniversary of Purim to use our stiff-neckedness. There's an interesting thing we'll learn from the story is that the children that seem to cause us the biggest problems, they're the ones who have this unique don't give up any child. If a child you want to give up on, that child has something in them. So to in ourselves, this seemingly the characteristic of the Jewish people, stiff-necked and focused on the wrong thing. This is our salvation. This is what rescued the Jewish people in the story of Purim. And with this, we're coming to greet Mashiach. As Rebbe said in his most famous talk about Mashiach, Rebbe said, we're stiff-necked in the positive sense. And we have to not give up and be stubborn and tell Hashem we're not giving up. We want Mashiach to come on our side, where we have to like the Rebbe said, we have to affect Hashem to bring Mashiach. Not